think we're coming okay here. Um, I'm happy this bush is gone because it was really, I think I mentioned in the last video that I had this painting in, it was pulling the attention too close to us. And not just being the fact that it was red, but it was just a shape in the wrong place. Uh, I've rounded this off a little bit. I know that somebody had mentioned, one of you guys had mentioned when I said that I wanted to incur into this cloud a little bit with more of these blues, that you hoped that it would not do away with the dappled look of the sky. And I don't think it has. I agree with that, you know, that notion. I kind of like the sky the way it is. I wanted to leave it. And all I did really was round it a little bit, and I didn't cut into it. I couldn't think of a good spot to bring some of this blue into here without it lining up with this rock or this tree, you know, or being exactly in the middle of something. So, you know, it's not necessary. I think that's good now. I did end up bringing these rocks a little bit higher, a little more important, a little more meat there. I like that too. I think that's worked. And as you can see, I've really darkened the foreground below it and brought in an angle of light over to this rock now. The water's not chalky, it's more interesting. I think there is enough light being caught on the tops of the waves as they come towards us or go away from us, whatever the case is. I may still lay in just a stroke of this, of titanium white and a hint of yellow ochre, just, you know, maybe in one or two or maybe three spots, don't know. Not going to worry about it yet. I will never use pure titanium white. I know this almost looks like it, but it's not. There's always a hint of yellow ochre in there, or something else, but almost always yellow ochre in my highest values. I like it. I find titanium white to be on its own very cold, and as soon as you add even one hair's breadth of your brush into your pile of titanium white, it warms that titanium white up a little bit, and I prefer things that way. It's neither right nor wrong, it's just my preference. Now, I like this coming down. Okay, the whole painting has more flow now than it did before. More flow without actually throwing the viewer off the edge of the painting too easily. Yeah, the line runs off, this runs off, this runs off, but this is what will hold the viewer's eye with strength, right? So we're not worried about, we don't have to worry about darkening everything on the edges. What I have too, you know, we have this light, this is our focal area really, and we have this light picking it up, and this on its own is fine, but taken in context with the painting as a whole, it is sort of the final nail in the coffin of dividing one side from the other. We have this strong blue, bright light, focal area, highlights in the water. We don't need any more. What we need now is something to cap it, to keep the viewer's eye from going off the bottom of the painting. So we need some strength. So all I'm going to do is take my brush and dim it. It's almost completely gone, but I'm going to get rid of it. Okay, make it less important. I want this to be heavy, deep, strong, supportive at the bottom. And I'm also going to, not that these lines are going to be very important in the final analysis. I mean, you can see really, this is not one of those paintings that has a lot of lines in it. It's just, or a lot of outlining rather. But because this is in the foreground, I want to re-establish that sharpness in the foreground. And I can go back into it with the odd knife stroke. Most likely, mostly brush. This is going to get, I'm going over this again too. I want to obliterate that so that I can rethink it and redesign it. I like that rock so far. I think that's okay. Even though it's in line with this stuff, I think that's okay. We're going to pull our attention in the foreground a little bit to the right. You know, once this, what I'm doing right now, once this is dried, I think that'll be okay to do. From here to here is fine as far as I'm concerned. Now we need to add very subtle changes. Because we have oranges and yellows and ochres going into purples in places, it's probable that I'm going to reintroduce some purple down on this rock in conjunction with some lichen or some of this foreground grass creeping up onto the rock a little bit. That's really the only function I want this area to have. It's only, what is that? That's about a 12 by 16 inch painting. So I don't want to complicate things. I had mentioned also before that I would need to do most of my fixing on this painting with a brush, and that I could go over it again with a knife later to reintroduce texture to it. I have, only in a few spots, taken the knife and reintroduced some texture. But I'm not going to do that everywhere, because there's so much texture on the painting already, being that it was done with the knife to start with, that I just go over things thinly with the brush. And that's good. I'm not going to worry about it. You know, we had the texture of the bush here. That is omnidirectional. The texture of the water is horizontal. So if I were to lay paint over top of these omnidirectional bumps, I would have a difficult time getting a clean horizontal line. So I've worked it with the brush, and that'll do. That's just going to have to be the way it is. It's okay. It looks fine. You know, you guys know it because I'm explaining it. But to somebody who's never seen the painting before, I don't think it would matter. It would matter to them. They wouldn't notice it. And from a workmanship perspective, which is the most important, it's a non-issue. The painting's old enough. I've washed it thoroughly, so the new paint will adhere to the old paint. It's not an issue. If the painting were only 3 months old and I were reworking it like this, I'd run into trouble. You want a painting to cure. In the case of oil paint, you really call it curing and oxidizing as much as actual drying. To say it dries isn't really that accurate a description of what happens to an oil painting. If it were 3 months old, I would put it aside for another 9 months, so that it was at least a year old before I were going to paint over it. That's just part of my background is learning restoration and old paintings, what works and what doesn't. Okay, I can't go into this rock now because I need this paint that I just laid on to dry up a little bit. As I say, I'm using turpentine, and I don't want to go wet in wet on a painting that has no other wet in wet. And it's a rock, so wet in wet, you rarely get as hard a strokes, certainly when you've got all this texture underneath it. I want that rock to have firm, decisive looking strokes. So that's just going to have to dry. Is there anything else about this I want to blather on? Well, I guess this is becoming my my intermission painting. The intermission between other paintings that I'm working on. You know, this is the second time I've revisited it. I think it was about just slightly under 2 weeks ago that I started to play with it. And I wasn't sure how it would go, but I'm actually really liking the transformation. I'm becoming pretty pleased with this image, so I'm probably going to continue with it. I may do more on this today yet. I kind of doubt it. Tomorrow morning the art store is open, and I am more likely than not, to go and buy another canvas. So it's likely the next video will be me attacking a fresh canvas. Talk to you soon.